Okay, so right off the bat here, this is a video that is going to detail a lot of negative things, right? So yeah, it's only one side of the story. That's fun. If you want the positive side of the story, watch any making of, behind the scenes, featurette on any movie's Blu-ray, go on YouTube, look up the making of, insert your favorite movie here, and you will know exactly why we do what we do and why people are driven to join this industry and why it's exploded in terms of scale and scope and ability. The positive aspects here are at your fingertips, so in my mind, it's not really worth discussing in great detail. And you know what? Maybe I will one day. But at this time, I think more people are unaware of the negative aspects of what it's like to be a VFX artist. So that's where we're going. Buckle up, it's gonna get rough. What's it like to work in the VFX industry? As this is something I have a lot of experience with, given that I'm a matte painter by trade, I certainly have a lot to say on the topic. Given how litigious some companies can be, I'm not going to make any specific comments relating to salaries, projects, companies, or people. I'll certainly weigh in on the more general and safer areas of discourse, but the specifics are going to come from cited sources, and they're not going to be my own. Ha! Lawyers watching this video. Ha! I say. As usual, sources will be cited both on screen and in the info section of the video should you want to do your own research on the topic. I welcome your comments below. Let's get going. The first thing people often want to know in regards to a career in VFX is if they should study at university or simply learn the software and techniques on their own. As this is an extremely complicated question with a lot of factors, we have a video on that topic all by itself. If the question is of interest to you, I encourage you to check out the link through on the screen or check the first link in the cited sources in the info section thing. Cool. A huge part of being a VFX artist of some kind is location. You are going to have to move, and you may have to move pretty often too. While the industry used to exist largely in Los Angeles, California, it has since shuffled around the globe several times. Currently, it's split between LA, London, Vancouver, and Montreal, with Shanghai and Bangalore positioning themselves to be the next big VFX hubs as well. These locations keep shifting due to the money that federal and provincial governments are able to offer production houses if they agree to do business within their borders. These gifts, rebates, and tax exemptions are called subsidies, and they almost never profit the location offering them. Eventually, this burns out the local economy, and they stop being able to offer so much free money, then another location with stardust glamour in their eyes will offer the same production studios better deals and more money in order to move their operations. They will, and of course, all the artists will have to uproot their lives and move to a place entirely foreign to them. We have an episode that deals with subsidies specifically and much more in depth here at this link, or in the info section as previously mentioned. Please enjoy. Another reason for relocation is often tied to company stability, since VFX houses must bid for work, essentially completing work on a project they may or may not actually get paid to do. In order to remain competitive, they have to be able to do the work fast, at a high quality, and at a lower price point than any other studio currently bidding on the same project. These very thin margins make for a lot of stress and financial instability within what may seem a solid VFX house on the outside. Companies fold at a very high rate, and it's not unusual to hear of artists being let go by the hundreds at a moment's notice. I personally know artists who have yet to be paid by studios who have gone bankrupt and never settled up. Between 2003 and 2013, that's a mere 10 years, a total of 21 major VFX studios either closed or filed for bankruptcy. Most VFX companies hire their employees on a contract basis. These contracts generally run the length of a project. It is extremely common that artists will move from studio to studio, going where the work is. The most common reason for constant artist relocation is the fact that permanent jobs in this industry simply don't exist. Since work is often contracted on a project-by-project basis, artists often find themselves unemployed as soon as a movie is delivered. Not only does this create an aura of uncertainty and a culture of fear in many studios, but it has the realistic impact of forcing artists to live a migratory lifestyle. There are other reasons for the revolving door nature of VFX, but they tie into another subject matter that I'm going to cover later in this video. So, to be a VFX artist, you'll need to be very mobile, likely on an international level. What else is important to know? The work-life balance of working in the visual effects industry is more of a work-work balance in execution. Overtime at many studios is generally a rule, though recruiters often sing a different song. Usually companies are good about paying for the overtime like they're legally obligated to. Sadly though, there are many well-documented instances of overtime being enforced and not paid. It continues to this day. I've personally been in situations where I'm surrounded by juniors who, in a misguided attempts to prove themselves or whatever, will work long hours without ever billing for them. Studios know this, and even if they're a house which technically pays overtime, they'll encourage a culture which hires, then overpressures these eager and naive young artists. Why pay a highly skilled senior when they could, for the same amount of money, lean on 5 juniors who won't complain as much when abused and may not even charge for overtime? VFX houses operate on a carefully cultivated culture of stress and pressure. The stress and fear involved in betting millions of dollars that an audience is going to show up is passed from executive to supervisor to production assistant to artist. It's a culture of fear and it's a culture of anxiety, and it will chew you up and it will spit you out if you let it. In today's VFX industry, no matter how hard you work, you are never good or fast enough. So better accept it. It's part of the game that corporations are playing with you. You can play this game for a while, maybe even years, but at some point you are going to burn out. And as soon as that happens, the VFX corporation will fire you or let you go or not extend your contract, however they prefer to call it. They won't look back on burned out resources either. Another factor that's important to be aware of is the complete lack of creativity an artist will be faced with. You will not make aesthetic choices and your work will be looked over with a fine-tooth comb by leads and supervisors on a daily basis. Work is not going to be a creative outlet and you cannot become emotionally involved in a shot. Sometimes you'll have to start over on a complex shot simply because your supervisor or producer screwed up, but they'll push the blame onto the artist to avoid heat from the client side. Sometimes the easiest shot will be held up for weeks in reviews, only to find out when the movie comes out in the final composite, your element was so buried under smoke and fog and motion blur that it's not even seen. What then was the point of the continual rounds of refinements and nitpicking from supervisors? There was no point. There often isn't. It's often just a game of ego and control. After all this, movie fans will also push you around, commenting online on how it could have been done better, and even though you had no real creative control on a given project, it's still hard not to take it personally sometimes. As a result of these factors, relationships with friends, significant others, and family members can be really hard to maintain. You'll find yourself slowly becoming that one friend who exists only online if you don't work very hard at maintaining actual in-person relationships. Even then, you're going to have to make some difficult decisions as your group of people you're close to will become smaller and smaller as a result of your career. For the people you do manage to stay close to, you will have to do a lot of extra work to not absorb the stress and negativity of the office. This is so you don't end up bleeding it onto those who care about you. You will take them down with you emotionally, and I've learned this lesson the hard way. The fact is, nearly all digital media artists are forced to work long hours that have a serious, cumulative effect on their family and health. These artists who work long hours mainly due to a false culture of crisis created by the industry. Unless you have determination of steel, say goodbye to any serious hobbies you may have had. Your time and concentration will be spent at the studio, and if you plan on also maintaining any relationships in your life, these hobbies will be the first to go. One way I've managed to stay close with and share my hobbies with my wife without entirely stripping my life of additional pursuits is to include her in them. This way we can grow closer together while still pursuing our interests. In order to make this work though, we operate on a somewhat strict, rigorous, and occasionally restraining schedule. You've got to manage your time well. To add to this complex brew of life changes is the lack of forward motion available at many major VFX houses. Raises are meager if they exist, and bonuses do not exist. The studios know they can just hire a couple college kids for a fraction of the salary if an experienced artist leaves. There are no unions. Really, there's no leverage on the artist's side whatsoever. If an artist wants to increase their salary or position, the only option they often have left is to leave their studio and accept a new job at a different location in order to renegotiate. All these factors can lead to eating disorders, sleep disorders, or deep depression, especially when you're starting out and not used to the stress, pressure, and uncertainty inherent to the industry. So why bother? With all this in mind, what's the point? Well, to be honest, that's a question a lot of people who work as any kind of VFX artist often wonders. You do have to be a special kind of crazy in order for the choice to jump into such a field to make any kind of sense at all. For me, working as a matte painter is just a step in the road. I could not live like this forever. I really couldn't. I would probably end up burning out completely at some point, and as there's no union protection, there's no retirement plan to fall back on when my health inevitably fails or I stress so hard my head breaks. So no, unless it's your burning passion, life mission, and sole desire to work in VFX, I wouldn't wish this industry upon any sane person. The industry you think exists, the Hollywood glitz that's hyped, stopped being a thing in the 80s. You wonder why so many major motion pictures look less aesthetically daring and more technically machined, over-polished even? It's because major motion pictures aren't made by artists anymore. They're made by passionate factory workers under a steel boot. This has been Cinema Cemetery, digging 6 feet deeper into filmmaking culture.